coming off another profitable event. We got a giant fight card on the horizon, UFC 265. I'm very excited for today's episode. Let's go.
The teller.
It's another day. Left jab, right jab. This is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim? Looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting. If you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go. I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What's up, you guys? UFC 265. We got the interim heavyweight championship on the line. A hell of a fight. Derrick Lewis taking on Gane. Stylistically, this is a crazy matchup. Power versus skill, or however you want to phrase it. But you guys catch my drift. You got the big, heavy power puncher and Derrick Lewis taking on the very tricky, skilled Muay Thai fighter and Gane, who's been really showing different elements to his game as well. It's an awesome matchup. Of course, there's been some controversy with this fight based on the fact that Francis Ngannou just won the heavyweight championship of the world against Stipe Miocic, but now we already have an interim title fight on the line here because there was some contract negotiations or some fight negotiations that went sour with the UFC and Francis. I'm not going to get too much into that because, who knows what's really going on behind the scenes. Obviously, there's some type of, dispute, obviously, and they weren't able to work things out. Francis Ngannou, I guess, wanted to go back to Africa for a little bit and spend some time back at home, and the UFC wanted to throw him right in there, with Derrick Lewis. So, I guess Francis was not down for that at the time, and it's a fight that we could see in the near future. This card, it's a solid card. Of course, though, when you have a main event like this, it doesn't matter too much what the other fights are looking like, because I'm just really, really excited for this main event. But the other fights are nice. You know, we got José Aldo taking on Pedro Munhoz, Vicente Luque taking on Michael Chiesa. It's an awesome fight. We did lose a very big title fight, of course. Amanda Nunes was supposed to be taking on Juliana Pena. That will not be happening, unfortunately. But again, solid fights throughout the card. Yadong Song taking on Casey Kenney. Very exciting fight in the bantamweight division. Rafael, Fiziev, can he keep the ball going? Keep the ball rolling? There's some good fights stylistically too. So you guys know the gist of this. We're going to get to this entire card here in a second. You guys know we got to take a look back at this past weekend's fights. We had Bellator. We also had a nice UFC card. We had a profitable weekend. We only had 2 official plays, but we went pretty big with those plays, and they both hit. So I'll be getting to those here in a second. We'll have timestamps below, like always. If you guys want to jump to a specific fight, you guys always have that opportunity. But I do want to also talk about some recent MMA news, and that's how we do it over here, guys. So I hope you guys will enjoy the show. It's going to be a good one. Let's get into it. So we got the Teller Times hot off the press. It was just posted on Instagram. Just a couple little key points of things going on in the news. Of course, Justin Gaethje is targeted to be fighting Michael Chandler at UFC 268. That fight, need I say more? Need I say anything about that fight? You talk about a stylistic matchup of just absolute fireworks and excitement. Those guys, you throw those two guys in the cage, it's going to be nuts. I can't wait to break that fight down because stylistically, both these guys, they bring the fight. Like I said, it's going to be a crazy fight, but stylistically, I think there's some intriguing aspects to that fight. So I do look forward to breaking that fight down. Artem Lobov is hanging up the miniature-sized gloves. The GOAT hangs them up. Artem Lobov has been a guy that I've had a lot of fun joking about, as a lot of you guys have too. The internet as a whole But again, you got to give props to Artem Lobov. Nothing but respect. That guy always brought the fight every time he was out there, whether it was an MMA fight, a bare knuckle FC fight. Shout out to Artem Lobov. I was always a fan of his. Obviously, he kind of overachieved as far as, where he fought in his career. He had main event slots, this and that, but he brought the fight, so the UFC respected him. We'll be talking about Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland, how that went here in a second when we break down or when we recap the entire card. And as far as the Bellator card too, we'll be talking about that. So you guys see a little bit of that. There wasn't a lot of big things going on in the news as of recently, so I'm going to just stroll right through this. We'll see if anything really rings bell here. O'Malley doesn't see how Petr Yan loses to Aldo in the rematch. You guys know I tend to agree there. I thought Yan was pretty much dominating Sterling before the DQ there. Gilbert Burns is not so confident in Woodley in that Jake Paul fight. Kind of agree there as well. I think it's going to be a closely contested match. I'm not really too confident in Woodley, who's looked like absolute garbage as of recently, and is a guy that's really more of a power puncher than a guy that strings his boxing together. And meanwhile, Jake Paul's been looking very fluid with his boxing. I wouldn't feel so confident in that as well. And Belfort says, I hope I don't end up killing Oscar De La Hoya. See about that too. With all these freak show boxing matches. We'll see about that. What else? Sean Strickland was a guy that was really saying some outrageous stuff throughout the fight week. His post-fight press conferences, his pre-fight press conferences were all a little out there. I don't mind it. I find it kind of funny. I'm sure some of you guys are a little bothered by it, but imagine Sean Strickland cruises his way towards a championship fight. I don't know if the UFC is going to be too excited to stand behind a guy like that as far as, in the media and as the face of the middleweight division, but it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Not really a lot going on here. Like I said, what else we got? Rory McDonald won't rule out a UFC return if the stars align. I would be open to seeing that. I'd love to see Rory back in the UFC. I definitely feel that his career has taken a little bit of a dive. I mean, this was a guy at one point in time I really thought was quite possibly the best welterweight fighter on planet Earth, and he's gone in there and had some lackluster performances. So even if he did come back to the UFC, I don't ever think that he would be at the top of the division, quite honestly. I don't know. I don't know if I see that right now. He'd really have to sharpen some things up and look a little bit more eager with his career. But I would love to see him back. And then, of course, like I talked about a little bit before, Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler targeted. That is one of the most exciting fights on the horizon that I could think of. So very excited for that. All right, guys, that's going to recap, or that's going to recap the recent news going on over the past week. Let's get into this Bellator card that took place this past weekend. We had the biggest Bellator fight of all time that took place this past Saturday. Let's talk about it. So Bellator 263. Like I said, this was the biggest Bellator match of all time. Maybe you can argue Michael Chandler versus Patricio Pitbull at the time, but I mean now this surpassed that. I mean, AJ McKee, like I've been saying, is the new face of MMA. He is over in the Bellator scene. If he ever wants to become a true great, he will have to come over to the UFC. That's just the way it works. But again, you guys know how high I am on AJ McKee, and that's why it was an official play of mine, a 4-unit play that I got at even odds. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you saw that bet right up. But we'll talk about that in a second. Let's see what notable fights we could talk about as we go through the card. Georgie Karakanian takes out Kiefer Crosby. I kind of told you guys on the breakdown there, I felt like Kiefer was a little bit over his head there. Georgie is just a more experienced, more talented fighter, in my opinion. Let's see what else. The Russians were coming through on this fight card. Gyoti Yamauchi takes out Chris Gonzalez. Gyoti is a very, very talented fighter. Got the finish via strikes, but let's not forget, Gyoti is the all-time leading Bellator submission fighter. So this guy, a truly skilled fighter, man. I always have a lot of respect for Gyoti, and I love watching him fight. Another Russian handled business via split decision. Islam Mamedov took out Brent Primus. Told you that fight would be a little bit close. Islam is a guy that really likes to use his wrestling and takedowns, but Brent does have some wrestling abilities himself, and he could strike. Usman Nurmagomedov takes out Manny Muro. Big surprise, takes him out in the first round. I told you guys you can mortgage your house on that. The line was right around minus 1,200, but those types of lines are crazy. I mean, you really do have to mortgage your house to even get anything back in return. Mads Burnell took out Emmanuel Sanchez. This was a very closely contested fight, in my opinion. I thought Emmanuel Sanchez probably won the first round. Mads got some takedowns and looked strong through the later rounds. And it was a closely contested match, a very exciting fight. And then in the main event, AJ McKee went out there, made quick work of Patricio Pitbull. I was chirping you guys all fight week, and I've been chirping about AJ McKee for a while now. As I said, an official play, got at even odds. I told you guys, you're probably not going to see that line next to AJ McKee's name for quite some time. AJ McKee is a guy now, now going out there taking out Patricio, the Bellator GOAT. Now AJ McKee is pretty much the Bellator GOAT already at the very young age that he's at. 18-0 as a professional, dynamic. The submissions are ridiculous. This guy's limbs are so long. I mean, he'll wrap you up. He'll rip your head off. And obviously, he showed now that he could strike very well. Also, beautiful head kick. Way at bay too. Patricio couldn't even reach him. To the point where he was at when he hit that strike. He was at distance. Out of harm's way. Threw a beautiful head kick. He's extremely fast. I'm just a big fan of AJ McKee's. I think that he should make his way over to the UFC if he really wants to push to be the greatest featherweight of all time. He says he wants these fights with guys like Max Holloway and all those types of guys. So come over to the UFC once you figure out what's going on with the contract. And AJ McKee, man, you guys should have all been all over that play there. I really believe that. I know that Patricio's done a lot of work, double champ, this and that, has excellent power, but there was just so many key factors pointing towards AJ McKee, in my opinion, and we cashed out really nice there, even play on 4 units, and a solid Bellator card. The crowd was back. I enjoyed that. Now, let's recap UFC Vegas 33. We had the big match of Sean Strickland and Uriah Hall. Other than that, though, like I said, it wasn't the biggest of cards. Philip Rowe took out Orion Kosi. Looked very good there, man. You heard him on the feet. Zaruk Adashev took out Ryan Bennett. I guess he goes by Bennett. I like to call him Benoit. Reminds me of the old wrestler Chris Benoit, and that's how he spelt it. But I guess you could put a little tang on that last name however you want to. But Zaruk Adashev is a talented striker. He pretty much outclassed Ryan there. Jin Frey, I was also on her. Took out Ashley Yoder. 2 dogs that I picked. Not official plays though. Danny Chavez has the draw against Kai Kamaka. 2 guys that I had the pleasure of having on the show. I was rooting for both these guys. Really the only reason why this fight was a draw, right, was based on the point deduction that Kai had after a couple different fouls there, poking him in the eye, kicking him in the nuts. And if it wasn't for that, Kai would have won the fight. How about this? Two big dogs came in right here. Of course, these were fights I really had nothing to do with, but Chris Grutzmacher took out Rafa Garcia. I thought that line was a little high on Rafa. I was a little confused by that, but at the same time, I thought Rafa should have got the job done there. Hurt Chris early in the fight, started to get tired, and then he faded. But, Chris, meat and potatoes, Grutzmacher looked good out there. Jason Witt as well took out Brian Barberena. Brian was so close to getting that finish, but he was a little tired himself later in that fight. I'm sure he was really kicking himself when he watches the tape back on that fight, or he will be kicking himself when he watches the tape back on that fight, because Jason Witt was very close to being finished. But Jason Witt has some solid wrestling, and he has James Krause in his corner, so he will go out there and he'll eke out some fights fighting like that. Melsik Bogdasarian takes out Colin Anglin. This guy Melsik, the gun, I told you guys this guy is a nasty striker. Has a lot of kickboxing experience. He was a kickboxing champion. He is nasty on the feet and got a nasty head kick in the second round there. Jared Gooden takes out Nicholas Stoles. This was a fight, I'll tell you like this. I told you guys I did a video breakdown specifically on this fight because it was a newly added match. I said the value was more so on Gooden, but I edged Stoles to win the fight. This was a fight, as we watch these fights take place, you got to look at them in certain ways. First off, nothing but props to Gooden for going out there and getting the knockout. But I think Stoles played this fight so wrong. If you watch how the fight took place right from the beginning, Nicholas was willing to engage in a firefight, giving Gooden a better chance to win this fight if he was able to clip him with the shot. As soon as they were sitting in the pocket, they were throwing heavy shots, both of them. You knew that this fight can go any way and that somebody could be dropped at any second. The fight grabbed my attention right away. I'm like, someone's going to get knocked out or hurt here. And you saw when it went to the mat, I thought that Stoles had a clear advantage there. Even when he was on his back, the way he was, reaching over for the Kimura, the way he was moving, almost sliding over to take his back, I felt that he had a big advantage on the mat, and he had a better advantage with his cardio. He should have let the fight play out slowly, let them start to get a little bit tired, and let the power kind of not be so relevant as they get a little bit more, tired in the fight, a little bit more worn. And he didn't. He was willing to engage in a firefight, and it cost him. He got caught, and props to Gooden for getting his first UFC victory. That was a big one. Cheyenne Bays hits Gloria DePaula with a nasty head kick. Whew. That was reminiscent to Eric Anders versus, was it Tim Williams? Or I think it was Tim Williams. Forget his name, but big, strong white dude. He got head kicked by Eric Anders. Reminiscent to that fight there. So good for Cheyenne. She gets in the win column there, and she could start to get her UFC career, coasting there, because she's a very talented striker, a black belt in Taekwondo, and she's a girl that's ferocious in there, and she needed the money, as she was really talking about. She was broke, and she was complaining how she took a loan out on the house, but, I don't know. Is that rare these days? I thought, taking a loan out on a house is pretty much the protocol to getting a house. I didn't know everybody just has enough money just to buy a house cash. She was making a big deal about that. I mean, yeah, you're getting a house. You are going to take out a loan on a house. But I get it. She's been busting her butt. She's happy to make some money there. And that takes us to the main event. My lone play for this UFC card, like I said, 2 plays in the weekend, hit both them. 6-unit play on Sean Strickland. Takes out Uriah Hall. I was very comfortable with this play here. I felt the only way Hall would have won this fight is if he hit Sean Strickland with a flash knockout, maybe with a head kick, some type of spinning heel kick. I was willing to bet against that right around that minus 210 range. I'll take that all day, because I felt like Sean Strickland would overwhelm Uriah Hall. He would be in his face. Uriah Hall does not like the pressure fighters coming at him. Doesn't fare well against them. I faded Hall in that Paulo Costa fight. We've seen Hall break a couple times like that, so I was all over that play. I hope you guys were as well. I was a little bit conservative with the plays this past weekend. You guys know what happened to me the weekend before. The Miranda Maverick play, I really feel like I got screwed pretty bad there. So, I wanted to be conservative. I wanted to make sure we brought some good money back into the account and back to everyone that's working with me here. So we were conservative, but we hit some nice plays here. Like I said, the AJ McKee at even odds at 4 units. We brought in about 6 units here over the weekend. So we'll take that money, and now we'll move forward to this upcoming weekend where we have a hell of a card. UFC 265. Let's get into it. So we have a hell of a main event here. We will be getting to that fight here to cap this episode off. But you guys know the routine. We're going to be cruising through this card. Please hit that like button for your boy here. It's highly appreciated if you guys can do that. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't already. It does really help me over here, so I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. All right, in the first fight, we got Johnny Munhoz Jr. taking on Jamie Simmons. Both guys coming off losses. Kind of different types of fights, though, right? Jamie Simmons took a fight on short notice against Giga Chikadze. Good luck there, right? Got thrown to the Wolves, and he got ripped up by the Wolves. Giga took him out in devastating fashion. He hurt him pretty bad there. You see him connecting with a nasty head kick. I mean, he got beat up pretty bad there, and you do got to give him credit though. He didn't get put to sleep necessarily. A lot of guys might have just had their light shut off. I mean, he showed some toughness, and I do believe that Simmons is a tough fighter, the Afro Samurai. Johnny Munhoz Jr. on the other hand had a fight against Nate Maness. He was coming into that fight absolutely flawless, undefeated as an amateur, as a professional, and even won the first round, got the fight down to the mat, and then started to fade a little bit in that fight. Was kind of desperate to get the fight back down to the mat, and Nate Maness was able to style on him with his boxing. So that's something that you want to take note of. Johnny looks like he's, at least in his last fight, really didn't want to keep the fight on the feet. He likes to use his grappling and his submission game, and you got to wonder how comfortable he'll be with his striking moving forward. Hopefully he's working on that. Jamie Simmons is a guy that will throw bombs at you. This guy likes to use his boxing. I've seen him go in there and really hurt some guys on the feet with his hands. It was against lesser of talent, but still, he does have that ability to throw hands in there. He's going to be the smaller opponent as far as his height goes, 3-inch a height disadvantage for Jamie, but only a 1-inch reach disadvantage. So I mean, Jamie's gonna try to get in there and land some flush shots to Johnny's chin. I think Johnny's going to be looking to do the same thing that he did in the Nate Maness fight. I do believe he's going to be looking to grapple here and get this fight down to the mat. He has had a lot of success with his grappling in the past. A lot of submissions on the resume, and I think that as he cleans up his striking and his overall game, I think he is a very well-rounded fighter. I think this is a great fight for him to bounce back with a solid victory here. Comes in phenomenal shape, and after spending 15 minutes in the octagon, I'm sure that he is a guy that will feel a lot more comfortable in there this time around. And a guy against Jamie Simmons, who, Jamie Simmons, it's not really known if this guy is even a UFC caliber type of fighter, right? Giga took him out early, and before that, like I said, he's been fighting a lot of lower level talent, fighting out of Wisconsin. So this should be Johnny's fight. The line is right around -230. Take a look at the live line right now. Right around that -230 range. Maybe that's a little too high just based on the fact of how Munhoz did not show up in his debut. And if Simmons is able to keep this fight on the feet, he does have some solid boxing, some decent footwork. There's a potential upset there. But overall, Munhoz is the better fighter. He has more aspects to win this fight. He's going to mix it up. Or he should mix up things overall and be the better fighter and pull off the victory there. So, yeah, I do have Johnny Munhoz to win that fight. All right, going over to the flyweight division on the women's side of things, we got Victoria Leonardo taking on Melissa Gatto. I'm excited to see Gatto make her UFC debut. She was supposed to make her debut here recently. She had a couple fights fall through. She's a girl that's undefeated. She's 6-0-2. Has some solid jiu-jitsu. A fight that stands out to me when I break down Melissa's tape, a good fight that you would like to watch, it's on YouTube, was actually her last fight against Karol Rosa. Karol Rosa is a girl that's in the UFC right now and has actually been looking good. She's a formidable opponent in the division. Melissa Gatto pulled off the Kimura there. She actually threw Karol Rosa in a triangle and then pulled the Kimura off as well, having the triangle locked up. She looked to be very, very poised on the mat. She's a purple belt, but sometimes you don't even want to look at the belt so much. I mean, you want to look at what you see on tape. This girl is very, very smooth with her grappling. On the feet, she was very composed too. Karol was in her face, rushing her. She was very composed on the feet, but more of a grappling-based fighter. Victoria Leonardo, you see her getting in some work with UFC fighter Andrea KGB Lee, a very talented fighter in the division. Victoria Leonardo, things did not go her way in her last fight against Menifield, but Menifield is a girl that might be the face of this division moving forward. Her striking is nasty, and I want to talk about some of her losses here in general, because if you look at the girls that she's lost to, Erin Blanchfield, she did lose to her, but that's a girl that does have some potential. Not really a bad name. Lost to Miranda Maverick twice on her resume. And then this was a kickboxing bout here against Shannon Sin. So other than that, she's been handling business. Took out Chelsea Hackett and Liz Tracy over in Invicta. Again, she got her victory against Chelsea Hackett on the Contender Series. She looked good in that fight, and now she's fighting a girl that has some real abilities as well in Melissa Gatto. So Victoria Leonardo is not getting any easy fights here. Melissa Gatto, very much the younger fighter, about 6 years younger. They come in with the same height. We don't have a reach advantage on Melissa. I'm going to take Melissa here. I like Melissa Gatto. I liked what I saw in that Karol Rosa fight. Like I said, I like how poised she was. I like how calm she was when the fight hit the mat, and I think that she'll pull off something similar to what she did in that fight. Even if she doesn't get the submission, I think that she'll use her grappling to just overall, kind of control the fight and pull off the W. I think she'll even show some wrinkles in her game on the feet as well. And Victoria Leonardo is just not that threatening on the feet, in my opinion. She's a tough girl. She's in there. She's trying to walk forward at times, and she's kind of just throwing some laboring shots at your head. But I'm not overly impressed from what I've seen from her on the feet. So Melissa Gatto should be calm, cool, and collected there, and she should pull off a W. The live line right now on that fight, we have, let's see, where is that? We have Melissa Gatto right around a -130 to a -140 favorite, so a slight favorite, which is understandable. You know, these girls, you never know some of these fights, right? Some of these fights, these girls that don't really have too much pop on their strikes. I mean, it could be a lot of pitter patter back and forth, but I like that grappling edge for Gatto, and I like her to win this fight. So the line, it's decent. I would even say Gatto could be more towards the -140, -150 range. It's a decent line there. That's where it should be. And it is her UFC debut, so let's see how she performs. All right, we got Miles Johns taking on Anderson Dos Santos. I just recently broke this fight down to you guys. Obviously, that fight did fall through, and it was rescheduled for this card. I actually had the pleasure of chatting it up with Miles Johns the day after that fight card, that Sunday, and he actually told me, this fight was getting put back together, and it was going to be taking place very soon. This is a good fight here. I'm not going to go too much in depth if you guys want to see the complete breakdown. I mean, I'll touch upon the key points again. It's not like it takes too long, but like I said, I already broke this fight down. I think Miles Johns is a guy that will have the wrestling edge here. I do like his wrestling. He has a good amount of wrestling experience. He's very strong. I give the power edge to Miles Johns. Anderson Dos Santos, maybe, not even for sure about this, because these guys, we've seen some ups and downs in these guys' careers, but maybe Anderson Dos Santos has a little bit of the edge with the jiu-jitsu, but I know Miles Johns is working on that as well. But Dos Santos, he has some subs on the resume, coming off that guillotine choke against Martin Day. I do feel that Day kind of stuck his neck out there and, he kind of allowed that to happen, but still, Dos Santos ate that up. Dos Santos lost his first two fights against Nad Narimani and Andre Ewell, and it was good to see him finally get that W there. But this is a tough fight for him. Miles Johns, he would have been undefeated if it wasn't for the Mario Batista knockout loss where he got caught with that flying knee. But other than that, he's been handling business, looked very good in his Dana White's Contender Series bout where he got the contract. This is a guy who comes in phenomenal shape and generally will have that edge when guys are hanging on each other in the clinch and the wrestling exchanges. This guy's very, very strong there. And that's always something good to have in your pocket when you have money on a guy. Because I do believe that he will be the guy controlling Dos Santos against the cage. And if somebody's getting a takedown, I expect Johns to be the guy getting the takedown and kind of be in Dos Santos' guard. Hopefully he can avoid the sub and pepper him up there. And don't be surprised, too, if he hits Dos Santos with the power shot. Dos Santos has very bad striking defense. That's one thing I noticed when you break down tape on him. His chin is there. His face is there to be hit. Does not move his head off the center line a lot. He's willing to engage you. He's very aggressive. He's coming in to throw shots, but he's there to be hit. We saw Miles land a nasty, nasty knockout in the third round in his last fight against Kevin Natividad, who in my opinion is even a little bit more of a polished striker than Anderson. Don't be surprised if Miles knocks out Dos Santos here. But this should be a good fight. I like Miles Johns here. He's right around that -200 range. I think that's reasonable. I think that he's the better fighter here, and he's a guy that's only 27 that's been putting in work with Fortis MMA, and he has that wrestling background. I expect to see more strides in his game than a guy like Anderson Dos Santos, who's 36 years old now going into this fight. I think we've seen the best of Anderson, and I think that his best is not... It shouldn't be good enough to take out a guy like Miles Johns. So I like Miles Johns to win that fight. This is a good matchup here. Fight taking place in the flyweight division. It's a little strange, right? Manel Kape taking on Odie Osbourne. Odie is a guy that's fought at featherweight, bantamweight. So Odie is really going to be coming down in weight here. To fight in the flyweight division against a guy, Manel Kape, that really has a nice frame for the division. Has not been able to get that victory inside the UFC just yet. But a guy that has experience over in Ryzen, fighting over in Japan. A guy that's a strong wrestler, has good power in his hands. The two guys that he lost to, very similar fighters, Matheus Nicolai and Alexandre Pantoja, two talented Brazilian fighters. Both those guys are skilled. And his last fight, he went to a split decision with Matthias. This is a fight against Odie, where Odie should be the bigger guy. We talked about him coming down in weight. Odie is no slouch either, right? Odie is a guy that, he has pop in his hands, has shown some nice striking. We saw him in the Contender Series. He pulled off a nasty armbar submission against Armando Valerio. Lost his UFC debut to Brian Kelleher, but that was a fight. He made a mental mistake in there and got caught into the Kelleher team. And, the guillotine from Kelleher. And Kelleher does have a nice guillotine, almost as good as mine. So, he did make a mistake there, but let's not put him under the fire too much because he did bounce back with a nice knockout victory against Jerome Rivera. Now, Jerome Rivera, though, Jerome Rivera is a guy that is not UFC caliber, and he's definitely, I don't know if it's official yet, but he's not in the UFC no more. He's definitely cut at this point. He's lost all his fights in the UFC, and he really lost the fight on Dana White's Contender Series where he got the contract. It was the bad decision, but he ended up getting the nod there. It was an exciting fight, but I remember watching that fight and thinking at the time, the guy that Jerome Rivera, I don't want to harp on Rivera too much here, but just to show you that that knockout against Odie, I don't know how much credit I give it, but Jerome Rivera, 4 losses in a row, and he should have lost this fight against Luis Rodriguez, who I thought at the time looked so good, but now even Luis Rodriguez, keep an eye on him moving forward, talented Mexican fighter, but everyone's taken out Rivera. So, but nevertheless, I do feel that Odie is talented. I like the pop on his strikes. He's going to have some size here. Only 29 years old, cruising into the prime of his career. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. Look at him, man. He's looking solid. Kape is looking solid here. I like Odie Osbourne to take this fight. Kape at times is a little bit hesitant on the feet. A little bit hesitant. He can be a little bit hypnotized with the stand-up. If you kind of take control of the stand-up, man, he'll sit there and he'll let you out-volume him. Putting in work with the GOAT right here. It could be. That's always a good thing. But, yeah, I'm going to take Odie here. Odie has shown flashes of grappling, submission skills. He could strike. I like how he's a tricky southpaw as well. Kind of throws guys off a little bit. And Manel hasn't shown up in those first 2 fights. Like I said, he's a little hesitant. I can't pick the guy that's more of a hesitant fighter in a spot like this. I know Odie will be out there throwing shots, and I'll take Odie to win that fight. Take a look at the live line. Yeah, and Kape is a hefty favorite, right around -200. So, somewhat surprising to me is even as high as -225. So people, disrespecting Odie a little bit in my opinion, and even disrespecting him so much that they mispronounced his name here, and they're calling him Oder, like he's got some stank to him. So they're calling him Oder Osbourne over here on Best Fight Odds, but I think he might surprise some of you guys. So you stay tuned and see how that fight takes place. Oh, how about this next fight? Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Jessica Penne. This is a fight. It's a throwback fight, right? I feel like you're back in like 2013 or 2014, where these girls were some of the top girls in the division. Karolina Kowalkiewicz has lost 4 fights in a row. Take a look at the names that she's lost to, though. Jessica Andrade, Michelle Waterson, Alexa Grasso, and Xanin Yan. That one not the best of losses compared to the other 3, but still decent talent there. Karolina is a girl. You remember her fighting for the belt against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. It was one of the more exciting championship bouts over there on the women's side that we've seen. 2 undefeated Polish fighters. We all thought Karolina was so good. But you know what? Quite honestly, her career has taken a little bit of some setbacks since then. She's very hittable, very, very hittable on the feet. It's kind of strange. I feel like her skill set almost took a step back as her career went on. I don't know if that's just perception based on some fights, but she's been very hittable in her fights as of recently. She's up there in age now. She's almost 36, but Jessica's also creeping up on 39, and she had a long layoff before bouncing back with that victory over Lupita Godinez. So that was a solid victory for Jessica. let's not forget, Jessica had a fight with Joanna Young Jacek as well, and she was brutalized in that fight. Not that I don't know how much weight you want to put into that, with a common opponent, MMA math, but Jessica looked horrible in that fight, whereas Karolina actually hung in there. But Jessica did look better in her last fight, and she was able to use her grappling and her clinch control against the cage, and she was crafty in there, and she was able to take out Karolina. This is a fight, right? The line is so close. I've always been a fan of Karolina. Real quick, I want to let this be known. I've always been a big fan of her. I love watching her when they're announcing the fighters as she sits, against the cage with her hands behind her back, and she just, has that little smile on her face. And she's actually came through for me on some solid plays. I remember having her against Felice Herrig. She put some good money in my pocket. I hate to say it here, though. I got Jessica Penne to win this fight. She looked good in her last fight. I thought that Lupita is a solid opponent, and Karolina has not looked good as of recently. She's looked very hittable. I'm taking Jessica to win that fight there. And it's a cool fight. It's a little bit of a throwback fight. If you're watching that fight, you can kind of pretend in your mind that you're, 8 years back or something like that, or however long back. A good fight there, though. We got Ed Short Fuse Herman taking on Alonzo Menifield. An excellent stylistic matchup here. Ed Short Fuse Herman, a guy that's been hanging around forever. Used to fight in the middleweight division. Got tired of doing the weight cut. He's just here to have a good time and get himself in a brawl. Doesn't really care about cutting the weight. He's not trying to make a push towards a title shot. He just wants to show up and put on exciting fights like he continuously does. And he'll have that opportunity here because Alonzo Menifield is a guy that will engage you on the feet. He'll look to knock you out. Stylistically, Ed Herman's going to have some opportunities here to try to drag Alonzo into deep waters and maybe pull off a sub late in the fight. How about Ed Herman taking out Mike Rodriguez in a fight where he was finished? He should have lost the fight, but you got to give him credit. Even after pretending it was a low blow or whatever, came back and then got the sub on Mike Rodriguez after being brutalized and finished. He was finished, and then he came back and he got the finish. Got to give him a little bit of respect there, even though obviously it was messed up what happened to Mike Rodriguez. And props to Mike Rodriguez for being a class act. You see him clapping there, because I would be going absolutely crazy if I just won a fight and I got robbed by the referee making the bad decision there. Menifield showing some evolution in his game. In his last fight, pulled off a Von Flue choke against Fabio Charant. And a pretty cool thing to see from him, being that before that he got knocked out by OSP, went back to the drawing board, and then pulled off a victory with OSP's move. Got to give him some respect there. He'll be the better athlete. He'll be the younger fighter. He'll have better power in his hands. If this fight goes later into the fight and Alonzo gets tired, Ed Herman could be in on some hips, could be on top, and could be pulling off a sub, or just controlling the fight, pulling off a decision there. Nothing but respect to Ed Herman here. But I got to say, it's more likely that Alonzo it comes in good shape here and is just the superior fighter. 1 inch reach advantage, not saying much. Pretty much similar frames here. I think that Alonzo Menifield should handle business here. A line up to minus 225. I don't know. I'm not necessarily crazy about that line. Based on the fact, like I said, if Alonzo doesn't get Ed out of there early, don't be shocked if the very tough Herman gets some takedowns and grinds him out. And Ed Herman has a very, very well-rounded game. He's very good on the mat, and he's very tough, and he has the giant elephant tattoo, and it's kind of like a good summary of who he is as a fighter. He's a wise, you think of an elephant, you think of the wise animal, whatever. He's a wise fighter in there. He's very durable. He can take a shot. Reminds me of an elephant, I guess. I don't know. But Ed Herman should probably lose this fight, but I'd be happy if he won it. It'd be cool to see a guy that's up in his 40s, creeping up on 41, still hanging around, taking out these nasty prospects with knockout power. All right, we're going down to the bantamweight division. Drako Rodriguez taking on Vince Morales. Vince Morales, he's won one of his last 4 fights. Losses to Yadong Song, Benito Lopez, Chris Gutierrez. It has a victory over Aman Zahabi, the brother of Faraz Zahabi. And Vince Morales, to be quite honest, is a guy that I've never really been too high on his skill set, if I'm being brutally honest. There's been some fights. I'm trying to think. The Benito Lopez fight, I really didn't like the way he looked on the feet. I felt like he's very susceptible to being tagged on the feet. Looks like he slows down at times. He makes some bad decisions in there. No disrespect, but something's been a little bit off when I watch Vince Morales' fights. Drako Rodriguez, the great Dracolini, coming off a loss against Aman Zahabi where he was caught by overhand. So MMA math really not adding up. As you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan of MMA math. This guy has a loss. He has a victory over the other guy, but that's not how it really works. Drako is a guy that has shown flashes on the feet to me. He's looked ferocious on the feet at times. Looked great on Dana White's Contender Series where he was able to get the contract. And he's still very, very young, only 25 years old. Expect to see evolution in his game. Vince Morales, 30. Not saying that he's necessarily done evolving, but I think we've seen the product of Vince Morales, in my opinion. And the best of what I've seen from Drako, in my opinion, is better than what I've seen from the best of Vince there. So, look at Drako cashing in. What is this, a $1,000 check? Okay. That's like a 2-unit play over here for the teller, but, it's all right. He's bringing some money in, and he worked his way up to the UFC, so props to Drako. I like Drako to win this fight. I think that Drako will have the edge on the feet. He has a 1.5-inch reach advantage, slightly the bigger opponent here. I just think that he's a little bit more skilled on the feet. Vince could be a little slow with his boxing at times. He's susceptible to being tagged. And I like Drako. I like the name too, right? Drako is a cool name. And his fighting style is fitting for that as well. Here we go. This is one of the better fights in the card here. Rafael Fiziev taking on Bobby King Green. Bobby Green, been in some controversy as of recently. Had that whole situation where he had some beef with, what was his name? Name slipping my mind. The guy that just had his arm ripped off by Paul Craig. Jamal Hill, yeah. So Bobby Green's been beefing with him a little bit. If he loses this fight or if he gets knocked out in devastating fashion, Jamal Hill will be putting some stuff on social media, poking fun. I guarantee you that. And unfortunately for Bobby, there's a really good chance that Rafael could hurt him and make him look like a fool out there because Fiziev has nasty, nasty power. Nasty power. Saw it in his last fight, knocked out Renato Moicano. Started off a little slow, but the power, again, he showed it. Absolutely beat down Mark Diakese before that. Took out Alex White. Lost to Magomed Mustafayev. That was a fight he was the favorite going into. And I believe that was his UFC debut. People were very high on him. But when he lost that fight, he kind of walked into a shot. Made a mistake in there. It wasn't, maybe if these guys fight 100 times, maybe he actually wins 80 times or something like that. But he was caught there. And Magomed Mustafayev is no joke anyway. I'm sure that was a great learning experience for him. He's a guy that's a very, very talented Muay Thai striker. Has trained a lot over in Thailand. And Bobby Green is, the tricky type of striker that can try to mix in some grappling. He has some wrestling. Not a lot of people realize he does have some wrestling. Coming off a tough, closely contested match to Thiago Moises. Before that, took out Alan Patrick, Lando Venata, and Clay Guida. Not the biggest of names, man. This is a step up in competition, in my opinion. Rafael Fiziev is a guy we got to keep an eye on. Pretty much the same reach here. Those guys that fight out of Tiger Muay Thai, they tend to be nasty. And this guy might be leading the way coming out of there. Rafael Fiziev is a scary guy. A very scary guy. As you see him trying to scare you there. I like Rafael to win this fight. I think there's definitely a possibility that Rafael lands a big shot and hurts Bobby Green. If not, though, I still think that he'll get the better of Bobby Green. Bobby Green has had a history of making fights play out closely. Even if he's losing, he can make them play out closely. I wouldn't be shocked if this fight played out somewhat closely. Bobby Green, that he's tricky. He has good head movement. He'll try to duck in, grapple a little bit, this and that. But Rafael Fiziev is a guy, like I said, a scary individual that can come out here and really steal the show with a nasty knockout. And I like Rafael Fiziev. Minus 335. The line is kind of high. I don't know. I don't know how crazy I am about that line. It's a little high. I would like that line a little bit lower if I want to do something with it, but we'll see how it plays out. All right, guys, we made it to the main card. We got Kenney taking on Yadong Song. An excellent matchup in the bantamweight division. Yadong Song, this was a guy that had a lot of momentum behind him going into that Marlon Vera fight. Even though he won that fight, a lot of people thought that he didn't. He didn't win that fight. I was one of them. Personally, I thought that Chito Vera did enough to win that fight. It was a close fight. Chito Vera controlled Yadong a little bit better against the clinch. I think he had a couple takedowns in there. He was mixing it up, overall. Yadong Song had some moments in that fight too. It was a very entertaining fight, but I thought he lost that fight, and then he also just lost to Kyler Phillips, who was a very tricky striker. I still think that Yadong Song has some crazy fundamentals. He's very quick with his striking, and the basics are performed very nicely by him. He has a nice jab. He's very crisp with his striking. He's very technical. He's very quick. So he can give problems to a lot of guys on the feet. Kenney is a guy tries to throw a little bit more power in his punches. He's more of a guy that's throwing hooks in there. He's trying to really land some heavy shots on you. He's a black belt in judo. So when you clinch up with him, and he has really good hips. He has good wrestling as well. He has some wrestling experience. I'm going to give him the edge in that department there. When these guys are clinching up and the wrestling exchanges are just pushed up against the cage, I think that Casey will have an edge there. I think that Yadong could have a decent edge as far as the striking goes. We saw Dominic Cruz really, shine in that last fight, and that was a fight that I thought that Kenney really should have showed up. But Cruz showed once again why he's a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest bantamweight fighters of all time, right up there at the top of the list of the division. So, Casey did, he was susceptible to being tagged up a little bit in that fight. I don't see any reason why Yadong Song can't capitalize in the striking department as well. Like I said, I am a believer in his talents there. But overall, like I said, I like Kenney in the grappling exchanges and in the overall MMA exchanges as they strike into the clinch, into takedowns, as they mix up everything. I think Casey will be extremely motivated as well, coming off that loss to like I said, one of the GOATs of the division. Size-wise, pretty much identical. 1 inch reach advantage for Casey, 1 inch height disadvantage for Casey as well. But I think that's pretty much irrelevant. It's going to come down to who can implement their game plan better. Can Casey, can he close the distance? Can he use his footwork to get on the inside, throw those power shots? Or does Yadong really use his footwork to dance around and tag Casey up? That's kind of how I see this fight playing out. I'm going to edge Casey to win this fight. Been a little bit back and forth on this. I think that Yadong is definitely live here, but I think that Casey's going to bounce back with the victory here. And this is a pick'em here, so it's really whoever you like here. I like the age. I would call it maybe an age advantage if you want to call it that. But Casey's more in the prime of his career at 30 years old, where Yadong still has a lot of growth to go through. I think that Yadong Song, by the time he's 28, will be more around the time that he's hitting the peak of his skill set, right around 28, 29, up into his early 30s. So he has a lot more development to go through. But again, a very talented fighter. I like Casey, though. I like Casey to win the fight. All right, how about this fight here? Tecia Torres taking on Angela Hill for the second time. Tecia Torres really been putting things together. A girl that's had a lot of tough fights. You go back all the way to the Ultimate Fighter. She did lose to Carla Esparza, the inaugural champ. Had a victory over Angela Hill there. A loss to Rose Namajunas, the champion. Took out girls like Beck Rawlings, Juliana Lima, Michelle Watterson. Then she had this big setback in her career. Look at the names, though. Jessica Andrade, Joanna Young-Jacek, Weili Zhang, Marina Rodriguez. I mean, you're talking about the best fighters in the division. So no real shame there, and she has looked very good in her last 2 fights. Took out Brianna Van Buren, a girl that had a lot of hype behind her, and then took out Sam Hughes. And again, now she's getting an opponent in Angela Hill, a girl that she's already defeated, but it was a while back. And Angela Hill has really, really grown as well. The queen of split decision losses is Angela Hill, always in a close fight. I mean, both these fights could have went her way, the Claudia Gadelha and the Michelle Waterson fight. I, in fact, thought she did defeat Claudia Gadelha. Looked good against Ashley Yoder in her last fight. This is a great opportunity for Angela Hill to try to get a fight back. That again was a close fight, and stylistically, I expect this fight to take place on the feet. Tecia Torres, a girl used to train at American Top Team back in the day. I don't believe that she's training over there now and hasn't been for a long time. I think she went over to Colorado. She's been out there for a while. Not sure if she married Raquel Pennington. I know they're dating or whatnot. Also a UFC fighter, a very tough fighter. And these girls are no joke. Some of the best fighters in the UFC. And Tecia Torres, I really think she's motivated. She's trying to push one last time. See if she can make some noise here. If she takes out a girl like Angela Hill, puts 3 fights together in a row, that's a big thing for her in her career right now. But Angela Hill is absolutely no pushover. Looks to be in phenomenal shape for this fight. And again, I expect this fight to take place on the feet. That's where both these girls like it. Angela Hill is going to have a 3.5 reach advantage. She's 2 inches taller, so a little bit more rangy. Great footwork. Angela Hill's getting up there in age, but I don't really think that's a factor. I think that she comes in phenomenal shape, and she's just, honestly, she's been, aging very well. I'm going to slightly edge Tecia Torres to win this fight. She's looked very explosive on the feet as of recently, and she's looked very confident in there. She already has a victory over Angela Hill, so she's going to have a little bit of the mental edge, possibly. I think that Tecia can pull this fight off and, keep things moving with her career here. So I like Tecia Torres to win this fight. It's a very close fight, and the line is very close as well. And I think the line is very reasonable too. Now this is an excellent stylistic matchup. Vicente Luque taking on Michael Chiesa. Of course, Chiesa more of a grappling type of fighter, but also he's tricky and rangy on the feet as well, and knows how to use the striking to set up the clinch and the takedowns. Usually has a nice reach compared to his opponent, but Vicente has a nice 76-inch reach as well here. Vicente is one of the most technical strikers in the game. I've been very, very high on Vicente for a long time. He's cashed many of tickets for me before. As of recently, against Woodley, against Nico Price, against Mike Perry. I've been very high on him for a long time. The one loss that he did have, which again I was against him there as well. You guys know I'm very high on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson as well. That's a reasonable loss, as I like to say. Don't put him under the fire too much for that. Thompson, one of the best strikers, and stylistically that was a tough fight for Vicente, because Vicente likes to use his Muay Thai striking and keep the fight on the feet. Although he's very well rounded as well. You see him pulling off that Darce choke against Woodley in his last fight. I'm a big, big fan of Vicente. I remember watching him back on The Ultimate Fighter, American Top Team versus the Black Zillions way back in the day. And, he's on a 3-fight winning streak now, but it's not even about a 3-fight winning streak. It's just he's been continuously winning throughout his entire career, because even before that loss, the lone losses that pop up once in a while, Vicente just goes in there and wins fight after fight after fight. Okay. And Vicente is very deserving of pushing his way towards the top of this division, maybe having a championship fight one day, if he can keep it together and get it there. But this guy is just nasty on the feet. I expect Vicente to have a true striking advantage over Chiesa. I think Chiesa has to close the distance and make this a scrappy fight where he can try to mix in a takedown and try to get on top of Vicente. Because if he can't do that, I do think that Vicente could end up shining in this fight. Chiesa is just not really known as a very polished striker. It's not really his style. I mean, he makes it work for him. Chiesa, does his own little thing. But again, very talented on the mat, and we saw what he just did to Neil Magny. Not a lot of guys go out there and do that to Neil Magny, but even that performance will not be enough for me to pick him over Vicente. That's how much I like Vicente here. But, you know, again, it's a stylistic matchup of two different kind of guys that I just think that Luque will have a slight edge here. And as far as the line goes, it's not really a steep line as well. But again, Michael Chiesa is a very dangerous opponent. And but I like my boy Vicente Luque, man. Just an overall very, very skilled fighter. A very well-rounded fighter. All right, that takes us to the co-main event. José Aldo taking on Pedro Munhoz. Love this fight here. José Aldo, one of my favorite fighters of all time. This guy is just a legend. Probably my favorite Brazilian fighter. You know, if I really think about it, you know, out of all the Brazilians, I got so much respect for Aldo. This was a guy I used to watch back in the day. I was always a diehard WEC fan. I've told you guys this before, but I mean, I watched all my WEC events. I was a diehard WEC fan. José Aldo was the greatest WEC fighter of all time, in my opinion. You know, took out guys like Mike Brown, Uriah Faber, Cub Swanson, all those guys. I mean, this guy was the champion. Nobody could touch him. The way he did it was ridiculous. This is when he hit Cub Swanson with the flying knee. Poor Cub was just curled up like he was playing hide-and-go-seek. And José Aldo found him again and landed some shots. It was nasty. The Faber fight, he brutalized the leg. Some of the nastiest leg kicks we've ever seen was from Aldo. And it wasn't the calf kick either, man. He would just brutalize your leg. It wasn't like he shut the nerve off or something like that. You know, shut the leg off by hitting the nerves. He would just brutalize your leg like he was whacking it with the baseball bat to the point you couldn't walk. You know, it was nasty. He would hit your thigh, everything. And you take a look at Aldo's losses, it's all against reputable opponents, man. The Marlon Moraes fight, I thought he won that fight, so scratch that loss there. Just took out Marlon Vera. Piotr Jan, the greatest bantamweight fighter in the world right now. Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champion of the world right now. You know, so no real shame in that loss there. Max Holloway, one of the best featherweight fighters in the world. Conor McGregor, you guys know what he was doing at that time. And then, you know, before that, like I said, just taking all these guys out. Cub Swanson, Mike Brown, Uriah Faber, Manny Gambarian, Mark Hominick, Kenny Florian, Chad Mendes, Frankie Edgar, the Korean Zombie, Ricardo Lamas, Chad Mendes again, Frankie Edgar, okay, Hanato Moicano, Jeremy Stevens even recently, okay? Do not sleep on José Aldo. He's a legend of the game. He's a nasty, nasty striker. Pedro Munhoz, though, extremely, extremely durable, very, very skilled submission skills. This guy can grab a hold of your neck and take you out. Great power in the hands. Like I said, amazing chin. He could walk you down and land some big shots. An amazing guy. Had the pleasure of chilling with him during Bare Knuckle FC, a Bare Knuckle FC fight back in the day. And what an awesome dude, man. We were chugging beers. We were wilding out, going crazy. Gleason Tebow was there too. And they were having a good time as well. So, you know, cool dudes there. You know, so, shit. I would love to pick Pedro to win this fight. And I think it is an extremely close fight and it can go any way. But I don't know, man. I gotta tip my hat to Jose here. I'm really rooting for him, and I think that he could win this fight if he plays it smart. I don't want to see Jose turn this into a slugfest. I want to see him be a little bit of a tactical fighter here. I want him to use his footwork. I think he'll be a little bit faster than Munhoz. If he does make it a dog fight, I could easily see Pedro clipping him and hurting him. But if he keeps it at bay, he has a 5-inch reach advantage. He's an inch taller. I would love to see him use the leg kicks, and I would really love to see him have a smart game plan and go out there, get another victory. And he's only 34, 34, about to be 35. Still has a little bit of time left in the game. I would like to see Aldo, you know, push for another big fight at the top of the division. So I'm hoping Aldo gets a victory here, but this is without a doubt not an easy matchup. Pedro Munhoz is nasty. So, you know, Pedro looked great in that fight against Jimmy Rivera. He was down in the first round, came back, won the last 2 rounds. Lost to Frankie Edgar via split. Very close fight. Some people thought he should have won that. And then the Aljo fight, Aljo's kind of picking him apart. At times, we've seen Pedro have problems where the fighter can kind of keep him at bay and be a little bit quicker than him, you know, shooting in and out with his strikes And I hope that that's the plan that Aldo has here. And I'm going to pick Aldo to win this fight, but it is very, very close. Okay, guys, it's a close fight. So we'll see how that fight takes place. But very excited for that fight. That's going to take us to the main event. You guys, please like this video. If you guys haven't already, please like this video. Subscribe. If you guys are interested in my official plays, do not hesitate to reach out to me. As I always tell you guys, I'll give you my pricing. We're coming off a spectacular weekend. This is going to be another spectacular weekend. We're going to start getting a big, big hot streak coming. And that will lead us to the main event here. Derrick Lewis versus Ciryl Gane. Whew. You better have the popcorn ready. You better have your seat pulled up to the TV, because if you're slacking, you might miss the entire fight, because this fight may not last long. Somebody may be getting knocked out. Anytime Derrick Lewis is in there, there's that type of potential. We saw what he just did to Curtis Blades, the way he timed the uppercut as Curtis Blades went in for the takedown. Derrick Lewis is showing wrinkles in his game, an evolution in his game. He's coming in better and better shape every time he's in there, taking the game more serious. You know he's taking this fight more serious than ever. It's for the interim gold. He's looking at this fight like it's not the interim championship, but the real championship. He knows he's going to make more money, and he's a dangerous man. He's a very, very dangerous man here. Ciryl Gane. Gane is a guy that is a freak athlete. You know, for his size, the way that he moves, I've been extremely high on him. I had an official play on him right in his last fight against Volkov, and he really showed up there. And this is a guy that's just extremely, extremely talented on the feet. He's so fluid. I expect him to have a major advantage as far as the striking in regards to that the stand-up just playing out as a whole without anybody getting knocked out. Just as they trade and as the fight takes place, I think that Ciryl Gane will be more fluid in there. He'll have better footwork. He'll have more volume. He'll land more shots. But Derrick Lewis will be looking for that one big power shot. And that's what this fight's going to come down to, in my opinion. I think that Derrick Lewis is going to have to really show Gane that he's a threat. He has to put some fear into him, where he'll be scared to really press in and really open up with his striking. He has to, intimidate him and scare him from not being able to just go in there and style on Derrick Lewis and go in and out and use his striking. That could help him there, because if he doesn't, Ciryl Gane will start to open up and really style on Lewis. But Lewis will be live to finish this fight at any given time with a power shot, without a doubt. And at the end of the day, though, man, I gotta go for the more skilled fighter rather than the power fighter here. I'm not a big fan of banking on that knockout, even though when it comes down to Derrick Lewis, he's a guy that gets that knockout quite often. Derrick Lewis is also a guy we've seen taken down and controlled at times in the mat. Ciryl Gane has shown evolution with his grappling. I've seen him take guys down, pull off, heel hooks, stuff like that. This guy is an ever-evolving athlete. I'm on Ciryl Gane here. I like Ciryl Gane to win this fight. The line, though, minus 335, you're going to be biting your nails this entire fight as Derrick Lewis looks to go in there and knock Gane out, and as it is a very, very realistic possibility. So, yeah, Gane will have a 4-inch reach advantage, a little bit of a taller opponent, but don't get it twisted, man. This is just a big-time heavyweight fight where there's a lot of crazy possibilities. I cannot wait for this fight. I like Ciryl Gane to win the fight. I think he's the most talented fighter in the division, and I think there's a very strong possibility that he could be wearing gold in the near future. Well, he'll be wearing gold here if he wins this fight, but maybe even unifying the heavyweight championship and becoming the real heavyweight champion. If he could just avoid the big shot from guys like Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou, and you talk about a guy that has great footwork, great striking defense, great head movement, and has shown up to this point that he can even take a shot as well. He hasn't really had his chin worn on. His chin isn't beat up. It's not like he's a guy that that's going to get clipped with a small shot and be wobbled, taken out. But when it comes to a guy like Derrick Lewis, it doesn't take much, man, for him to put out anybody. So there's just so many wild elements to this fight. Again, though, I like Ciryl Gane to win this fight, and I'm rooting for Derrick Lewis if I don't have any action one way or another. I'm definitely rooting for the American fighter, and Derrick Lewis, a guy that represents the USA, represents Texas. I love everything Derrick Lewis stands for. One of my favorite fighters in the game, and cannot wait for that fight. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up today's show. Again, do not hesitate to reach out to me if you guys have any questions. If you guys want to talk anything MMA, catch me on all my social media. Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _, Twitter, The MMA Teller. You can even shoot me an email, MMAFortuneTeller@gmail.com. Shout out to all you guys. Nothing but respect. I appreciate every single one of you guys. And for today's positive message, I'm going to tell you guys, for any of you guys that are still smoking cigarettes, you guys got to cut that out. No cigarette smoking. And whatever you got to do to quit, whether you got to get the gum, the nicotine patches, any of that type of crap. If you're still smoking cigarettes today, you're messing up in a big way, man. You're taking years off your life. And I only say that to try to help motivate some of you guys to quit. Not to throw shade at you guys, but it's a horrible habit that takes years off your life, and in some cases takes significant years off your life, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate. I've had family members that I've lost very early due to cigarettes. No cigarette smoking. All right, guys. On that note, signing out. Teller.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.